Hello everyone, welcome to Frightful Whispers. I'm here to guide you into the shadows tonight. I know you're using this video to unwind and drift off to sleep. So, before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Where are you watching from? And what time is it for you? Now, get cozy, relax, and let the whispers of the night take over. I don't know why, but something about that night felt different. Maybe it was the chill in the air, or the quiet that surrounded the neighborhood. You see, I've babysat for the Carvers before, plenty of times, but tonight it just felt off. As I pulled up to their house, I couldn't shake the sense that something was wrong. It wasn't the kind of wrong that screams danger, but it was there. A quiet, unsettling kind of wrong. The house stood at the end of a long driveway, surrounded by tall, perfectly trimmed hedges that stretched into shadows. The lawn, the driveway, everything looked pristine. Too pristine, almost as if someone had carefully crafted it just for show. The streetlights flickered in the distance, and the soft hum of my car's engine seemed louder than it should have been in the silence. The house. It always seemed to loom a little too much. You'd think with all the time I'd spent there, I'd be used to it. But tonight, the tall gray shutters on the windows seemed to stare back at me, empty and unblinking. The porch light flickered twice before going out, and I felt a cold breath pass over me, despite the warm summer night. I shook off the unease and parked my car. I needed the money. Simple as that. I grabbed my bag and headed toward the front door. The door opened just as I rang the bell, and there stood Mrs. Carver, looking a bit more frazzled than usual. "Lisa, you're here, thank goodness," she said, her smile tight but still warm. There was something about her eyes, like she hadn't been sleeping well, or maybe she was just rushing to get out. Either way, I didn't think much of it. "Sorry, we're running behind," she continued, her voice a little higher than normal, like she was forcing cheerfulness. "Jamie's already down for his nap. You know the routine. We won't be too long. Just make sure he's asleep by 10 and feel free to relax a bit, okay?" I nodded, offering a reassuring smile. "No problem, Mrs. Carver. You guys go ahead. I've got it covered." She seemed almost relieved, but there was an odd look in her eyes. A quick glance at the clock, 8:15 p.m., was enough for her to start making her exit. The air outside was heavy, the kind of humidity that clings to your skin. Before she left, she looked at me once more. "Call if you need anything," she said, her voice wavering ever so slightly. "Anything at all." Then she was gone, leaving me standing alone in the foyer of the Carver house. The door clicked shut behind her, and the sound echoed through the silence, settling into the corners of the house. I stood still for a moment, breathing in the strange stillness. The house felt empty. Not in the sense that no one was home, because I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioner, the low buzz of the fridge in the kitchen, but something about it felt heavy, suffocating. The walls seemed to close in just a little tighter than they should. I shook my head. It was probably just me being paranoid. I'd been stressed out lately. School, work, everything. The usual. I glanced at the baby monitor on the coffee table. Jamie's room was in the back, so I decided to settle in for a bit, flip through a magazine, wait until the little one woke up. It'd be a quiet night just like the others. A quick babysitting gig, a few hours to kill, and then back to my own life. The living room was cozy, a little too dim, but nothing I hadn't seen before. The furniture was old but sturdy, covered in floral prints that looked like they hadn't changed in decades. The shelves were full of books, the kind of books you'd only read when you were looking for something to distract you. The soft, creaky floors beneath my feet reminded me of all the times I'd walked through this house. the familiar path between the kitchen and living room. It wasn't home, but it was normal. I had to tell myself that. The clock on the wall ticked, steady and loud in the silence. Tick, tick, tick. My fingers brushed against the pages of the magazine, but I couldn't focus. Something about the house wouldn't let me relax. Maybe it was the way the air conditioning hummed in the background, or how the shadows on the walls stretched just a little too far. It was almost like the house was breathing. I looked up at the baby monitor again. Jamie, the little toddler I was watching, was still asleep. His tiny chest rose and fell with each breath, his face peaceful, untouched by the chaos of the outside world. For a moment, I felt reassured. He was just a baby after all, nothing to worry about. But then something shifted. His face, Jamie's face, changed. His eyelids fluttered slightly, and I could have sworn he was looking directly at the monitor, his dark eyes locked with mine. But there was something in them, something hollow, unsettling. It wasn't like the sweet, sleepy gaze of a child. It was as if he were aware of something I wasn't. I shivered. Then I heard the first knock. It was loud, sharp, the sound splitting through the silence of the house. I glanced toward the door. I froze. It wasn't the sound of the wind knocking against the windows, or a branch swaying against the house. No, this was a deliberate, firm knock. Someone was at the door. But who? I stood up, my heart thudding in my chest. The knocks came again, more insistent this time. I walked slowly toward the door, my breath caught in my throat. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob. I looked through the peephole. 2 figures stood there, tall, shadowy, obscured by the darkness outside. Their features were hard to make out, but something about their shape, it felt wrong. Their presence felt wrong. "Lisa, open up, it's us," one of them said. It sounded like Mr. Carver. His voice was familiar, too familiar, but it sent a chill down my spine. There was something off about the way he spoke. It wasn't quite right. I took a step back from the door. No, something was wrong. I had to be imagining it. I glanced over my shoulder at the baby monitor. Jamie hadn't moved, but he wasn't asleep either. His wide eyes stared directly at me, and for the first time, I noticed that there was no expression on his face, just that hollow, eerie gaze. Then I heard another knock. Louder this time. The door creaked on its own, as if pushed by an unseen hand. I wanted to run. My legs refused to move. The door was slowly opening by itself. I looked back at the monitor. Jamie's face was pressed against the screen now. And that's when I realized I wasn't alone. Not at all. I arrived at the Carver house just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the quiet street. The air felt thick, somehow heavy, and the faint smell of damp grass lingered in the cool evening breeze. It was the kind of suburban neighborhood where everything looked too perfect, too clean, too quiet. And as I pulled up to the Carver's house at the end of the cul-de-sac, I felt that uncomfortable tightness in my chest. Something wasn't quite right, but I shrugged it off, told myself it was just nerves. It wasn't my first time babysitting for them. It was a simple gig, like always. The Carvers were nice, middle-aged people with a young child. It was the perfect mundane job, and I needed the cash. I got out of the car, and as I approached the house, the familiar sights greeted me. Tall hedges trimmed perfectly, the same gray shutters, the same winding pathway up to the door. It looked exactly as it always did, but tonight there was an unsettling stillness to it. It felt like the house was holding its breath, like it was waiting for something. I shook off the feeling. I'd babysat here before, and nothing had ever happened. It was just a house. I rang the doorbell, and the door opened almost immediately. like they were waiting for me. Mrs. Carver greeted me with a tight smile, her eyes a little too wide, a little too distracted. "Lisa, you're here, thank goodness," she said, looking flustered. "Sorry, we're running behind. Jamie's already down for his nap. You know the routine. We won't be gone long. Just make sure he's asleep by 10. Call if you need anything, okay?" Her voice was light, but there was a tension in it. Something just below the surface that I couldn't quite place. It didn't seem like the usual calm Mrs. Carver I knew. But again, I told myself it was nothing. She gave me a quick hug and dashed out the door with Mr. Carver. They were gone before I could say another word. I stood in the doorway for a moment, listening to the sound of their car engine fading into the night. The house felt quieter now. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're not alone. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me from somewhere in the shadows. I pushed it aside. I was overthinking things. This was just a babysitting job. Jamie, the little boy I was watching, was in his room down the hall. I walked toward the living room, sank into the couch, and glanced at the baby monitor. It showed Jamie peacefully asleep in his crib. Everything seemed fine, normal. But there was something off about the air. It was thick, like the house was holding something back. I tried to ignore it, but the unease kept creeping in, growing stronger with every minute that passed. I reached for my phone, hoping to distract myself for a moment, but then it rang. The screen lit up, and my stomach dropped. It was Mr. Carver. My heart started racing as I picked up. "Hello?" There was a long pause. Too long. Then I heard his voice, but something was wrong. It didn't sound like him. It was distant, strained. "Lisa, everything okay?" His voice came through, but it wasn't quite right. It was like he was somewhere far away. "Yeah, everything's fine," I replied, trying to sound calm, but my throat felt tight. "Jamie's asleep. You guys okay?" There was another long silence on the other end, a crackle of static, and then, "We've been trying to reach you. Are you sure everything's all right?" His voice was softer now, quieter. I felt a chill slide down my spine. Something was wrong. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice faltering. "You guys just left a couple of hours ago. You're still out, right?" Another pause, then a whisper I almost couldn't make out. A crackling, faint whisper in the background, like someone else was speaking to him. But there was no one else. It was just him, wasn't it? "Lisa," his voice dropped lower, barely audible now, "we've been waiting for you." I couldn't breathe. My skin prickled, goosebumps crawling up my arms. There was a low hum in the background now, like static, filling the silence. Waiting for me? I opened my mouth to speak again, but the words stuck in my throat. The call cut out. The line went dead. I stared at the phone screen, my heart pounding. What the hell had just happened? I tried calling him back, but it wouldn't go through. I tried again and again, but it was useless. No answer. I looked at the baby monitor in my hand. Jamie's face was still on the screen, but now his eyes weren't closed, like they'd been when I first looked at him. His eyes were wide open, and his gaze wasn't just fixed on the monitor. It was like he was staring at something behind me. I turned, suddenly feeling a presence in the room. The air seemed heavier, colder, like something was just watching. And then, a knock at the door, loud, sharp, unmistakable. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Who? I wasn't expecting anyone else. The knock came again, louder this time. I slowly walked to the door, every step feeling like it was in slow motion. My hand was shaking as I reached for the doorknob. I looked through the peephole, my heart hammering in my chest. Two figures stood outside, tall, shadowed. Their faces were obscured by the dark. but something about them felt wrong. Their bodies were too still, too perfect. "Lisa, open up. It's us," one of them said. "Mr. Carver?" The voice sounded like his, but not quite. It was wrong. It sent an icy shock through me. I stepped back, my pulse quickening, my breath shallow. I looked again at the baby monitor. Jamie was standing in his crib now, staring directly at me with that empty, emotionless gaze. And that's when it hit me. The parents I had just spoken to, they weren't who they said they were. The knock came again, and the door creaked open, on its own. I wasn't alone anymore. I don't know how long I stood there staring at the door. My hand was frozen on the doorknob, my mind racing with thoughts I couldn't keep straight. The knock had stopped, but the silence that followed was worse than any noise. It was suffocating, pressing against my chest as if the house itself was holding its breath. My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears, every beat a warning, a scream I couldn't let out. I glanced through the peephole again. The shadows outside the door were shifting slightly, but nothing moved. Nothing. No footsteps, no rustling of clothing. Just two dark shapes standing there, still as statues. And it was then that I realized something was horribly wrong. I couldn't see their faces clearly. They were too far back, shrouded in darkness. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the stillness. The unnatural stillness. The second knock came, louder this time. It rattled the door on its hinges, the sound so sharp, so forceful that it felt like a physical punch to my chest. I recoiled, stepping back, my pulse skyrocketing, the room spinning with dizziness. My brain screamed at me to move, run, leave, get out, but my legs wouldn't obey. I felt paralyzed, pinned to the floor, the cold fear settling like a stone in my stomach. Who is it?" I managed to croak, my voice small and shaky, swallowed by the thick, heavy silence of the house. But I knew better than to expect an answer. My mind was already making the connections, already screaming at me that I should not be here. The knock came again, louder, sharper, angrier. My hand clutched the doorknob tighter, but I didn't open it. I couldn't. Something told me that once I did, once I allowed whatever was on the other side in, there would be no turning back. I turned to the phone. Maybe I could call the Carvers, get a signal, but when I looked at the screen it was blank. No bars, no connection, just the static of nothing. Why couldn't I call anyone? Why couldn't I make it stop? Bang, bang, bang. Another series of knocks, louder, more insistent, shaking the door frame. I could feel the vibration beneath my feet, the noise pulsing through my skull. What the hell was happening? I stood there, paralyzed, watching the shadows shift. But then, I don't know why I did it, I moved toward the door. I felt like I had no choice, like some unseen force was pushing me forward, dragging my feet to the threshold. I could feel the door's cold surface beneath my hand, the cool metal of the doorknob now slick with sweat. My eyes stayed glued to the peephole, heart pounding in my throat. They were still there. The shadows stood as still as before. But now, the figures seemed closer than they should have been. And then, I saw it. The movement. One of the figures shifted. Just the slightest movement, enough to send a shiver down my spine. My heart stopped. Something about the way they moved, it wasn't human, it was wrong, so wrong. Then the voice came, clear through the thick silence. Low, calm, too calm. A voice that sounded almost like Mr. Carver's, but twisted, wrong. "Lisa," it said, "open the door." My throat tightened. I could barely breathe. "Who are you?" I whispered, my lips dry, my mouth too full of dread to form proper words. The figure outside didn't respond right away. Another shiver ran through me, like cold fingers brushing against my skin. I heard a faint rustling, like someone moving their feet on gravel. But still, no one spoke. The voice came again, just as smooth, just as wrong. "Lisa, it's us. Open the door. Don't be afraid." But I was afraid. I was terrified. The words felt like they were being forced into my mind, like they didn't belong. The air around me was suddenly too thick, too heavy. My breath caught in my chest as the door creaked, and I heard the unmistakable sound of the lock turning on its own. The door was opening. No, it couldn't be. I stepped back, my feet stumbling over each other, my heart thudding violently in my chest. But the door didn't stop opening. It creaked slowly, widening further and further until it stood completely ajar. And just like that, the figures outside weren't shadows anymore. They were right there, in the doorway, framed by the dim light of the porch. And what I saw, what I felt, made everything inside me scream. The figures, they weren't human. Their faces were indistinguishable in the dark, but their eyes were wide, black, hollow, empty. The coldness in them was unmistakable, an absence of everything that should have been there. And the smile, that smile, it was too wide, too perfect, too wrong. My blood ran cold, and for the first time, I truly understood fear. The door was open now, fully. They were inside. I backed up, but I didn't make it far. My breath was coming in short gasps, my legs trembling beneath me. The house felt like it was suffocating me. The shadows were closing in, stretching out, reaching for me. I wanted to scream, to run, but my voice wouldn't come. "Lisa!" the voice called again, now a whisper, too close, too intimate, like it was right behind me. The smile, the one that didn't belong, widened even further. And I realized, too late, that the door hadn't opened for me to escape. It had opened for them. I turned, and they were already in the room. I couldn't move. My feet were frozen to the floor, and my heart was a drum in my chest, pounding wildly, drowning out all other sounds. The house felt wrong. The air, heavy and thick with a cold I couldn't explain, pressed against my skin as if it were alive, watching me, waiting. The door, which I hadn't even realized was opening, creaked louder now, its slow, agonizing motion a signal I couldn't ignore. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't stop myself. And then they were there. They stepped through the door, like shadows slipping into the room, their movements slow, deliberate. They weren't human, not in the way we understand it. They moved with a rigidity that was almost mechanical, a coldness that seemed to make the house shiver. Their faces were too still, too perfect, too wrong. The man, who resembled Mr. Carver, stepped forward first. His eyes locked on mine, dark and lifeless. But there was something else behind them, something hollow, something that wasn't him. The smile he wore was too wide, stretched too far across his face, as if it were pasted there. It didn't reach his eyes, it was empty, fake, and it made my blood run cold. "Lisa," he said. His voice was smooth, calm, too calm, like he had rehearsed the words 1,000 times. "It's us." The words twisted in my mind, a mocking echo of something I should recognize. The voice sounded like Mr. Carver, but there was no warmth to it, no life, just cold. My eyes shifted to the woman who followed him in, Mrs. Carver, but again not. Her hair was perfectly in place, her skin unnaturally smooth. But it was the eyes that made my breath catch. They were cold, empty, hollow. They didn't look like hers at all. Her smile, too wide, too perfect, stretched across her face as she walked toward me. "You've been waiting for us," she said, her voice sweet, almost sing-song, but it carried a weight to it that I couldn't ignore. It was the kind of voice that shouldn't exist in the same world as mine. The kind of voice that should only exist in nightmares. I took a step back, my feet finally moving, but the weight of dread in my chest kept me from going anywhere. I wanted to scream, to run, to fight, but nothing came out. I couldn't make myself move fast enough. She tilted her head, her eyes never leaving mine. The stillness in her gaze was unbearable, like I was being sized up by something not human. "Lisa," she whispered, leaning in just enough that her breath brushed my ear. "It's okay, we've been waiting for you." Every inch of my skin screamed at me to get away. My breath came out in short, shallow bursts. I wanted to scream, but my throat was dry, tight, as though it had closed up, unwilling to let the sound escape. My mind screamed for help. I should have called someone. Anyone. But the phone was useless. The house was closing in on me, its walls thick with tension. I could feel the weight of the air pressing against me, suffocating me with every second that passed. I looked at the baby monitor on the table. Jamie was still there, lying in his crib. But he wasn't sleeping anymore. His eyes were wide open, his pupils dilated, black as coal. He wasn't crying, he wasn't moving, he wasn't alive. I blinked hard, but the vision didn't change. Jamie was staring right at me. The woman's voice broke through my thoughts like a cold knife. "Look at him, Lisa, he's waiting too." I snapped my head back toward her, her words creeping into my brain, and then, it hit me. It wasn't just me they were after, it was him. My mind scrambled, desperately trying to figure out what to do, but there was nothing. My legs couldn't carry me. The fear in my chest was too thick, the walls were too tight, and then, the man, the figure that looked like Mr. Carver, stepped closer, his steps deliberate, like the very air around him made space for him. "It's time, Lisa," he said, the words rolling out in that same cold, smooth tone. "We've been waiting so long for this." His eyes never left mine. They were hollow, black, empty, but I could feel them drilling into me, pulling me in. I felt cold. I felt trapped. I took another step back, but I wasn't fast enough. They were already too close. I turned, trying to escape, but the door slammed shut behind me with a sickening thud, trapping me in the room. The sound was final. It made the air heavy, thick with something I couldn't define. And then, they were standing right in front of me. No, no, no. I wanted to scream, but my mouth was dry. My body refused to cooperate. I was trapped in the room with them. The woman reached out, her hand cold and delicate as it touched my arm. "We're taking you with us," she said softly, almost like a lullaby. "Just come with us." And I felt it. The coldness in her touch seeped through my skin, into my veins. My body felt like it was turning to ice, like I was being frozen from the inside out. I gasped for air, but I couldn't breathe. They had me. The door was locked, and I was no longer sure whether I was still alive. The last thing I remember was the weight of their hands on my shoulders, dragging me toward something darker. Something far worse than I could ever have imagined. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the door, trapped in a nightmare I couldn't escape. The figures in the room were too still, too cold, and every breath I took felt like it was being stolen from me. The imposters, whatever they were, had closed in around me, their eyes cold, unblinking, like they were watching my every move, waiting for something. For me, I wanted to scream, to break free, but the fear had me paralyzed, rooted to the spot. I couldn't even speak. My body refused to obey, as if the house itself had stolen my voice, stolen my will. The woman, the imposter who looked like Mrs. Carver, took another step toward me, her smile stretching wider, more unnatural, as if it were a mask she couldn't take off. I tried to look away, but her eyes held me, locking me in place, forcing me to look at her. "Lisa," she said softly, her voice low and taunting. "You've been waiting for us. We've been waiting for you." Something in me snapped. I didn't want to hear any more. I couldn't bear it. I didn't know what they were, but I knew they weren't human. I couldn't stay here any longer. Just then, I heard it. A knock. A soft knock at the back door. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. Someone real, was knocking. I didn't know who it was, but the sound was like a lifeline thrown to me from the darkness. The imposters didn't seem to hear it. They didn't react. They just stood there, watching me, their expressions frozen, unmoving. Knock, knock, knock. The sound echoed louder, insistent. I couldn't stay here. I had to do something, anything, to get away. With all the strength I could muster, I turned and stumbled toward the back door. My legs felt like lead. Every step like I was dragging myself through thick mud. But I kept going. I reached the door, my fingers trembling as I grasped the cold handle. I twisted it, my heart pounding, and pulled the door open with all the force I had left. And there, standing on the other side, was Mr. Green. I couldn't believe my eyes. Mr. Green, the elderly man who lived across the street. His face was pale, his eyes wide with urgency, and for the first time I saw him in a light I'd never seen before. He wasn't the quiet, reclusive neighbor I'd always known. There was something more to him now. "Lisa," he said, his voice low, almost frantic, "you need to get out of here now." His words hit me like a punch to the gut, and for a moment I was too stunned to speak. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it all. How had he known? How had he gotten here? He didn't waste any time. His eyes flickered over my shoulder, toward the living room, and I could see the panic starting to rise in his chest. "They're in there, aren't they?" he muttered, as though he already knew the answer. "Mr. Green, what's going on? What's happening? What—" He cut me off, his tone hard and urgent. "You need to listen to me, Lisa. Those people, the ones you've been talking to, they're not the Carvers. They've been dead for hours." I stared at him, my mind reeling. What? What did he mean? They were alive. I had just seen them. I had talked to them. But Mr. Green's face was pale, almost ashen, and his hands were shaking. "This house," he continued, "it's been empty for years. The Carvers aren't here anymore. Something else has taken their place. Something evil, something that mimics them. Those things in there, they're not human." My body went cold. Not human? But how? How was this even possible? His voice dropped lower, his eyes darting toward the door as though he expected someone, something, to come through at any moment. "You've been lured here, Lisa. It's not a coincidence. They've been waiting for you, just like they've been waiting for Jamie. This house, it's a trap." I shook my head, trying to make sense of his words, but they felt like they were coming from a nightmare. It didn't add up. It couldn't. I had seen the Carvers. I had heard their voices. They were real. "Mr. Green, you don't understand. The Carvers, they were here. They just left. They... His eyes grew hard, and he stepped closer to me, his hands gripping my shoulders. "No, the real Carvers died a long time ago. Those things in there, they're not them. Whatever is pretending to be them, it's using their forms, and it's using you." His words were like a slap to my face. I staggered back, my mind spinning, trying to grasp what he was saying. But the truth was there, hanging in the air. I could feel it. The heaviness in the house. The strange coldness that had crept over me. The wrongness in everything I had seen. I opened my mouth to say something, to ask him more, but before I could, a loud slam echoed through the house. The back door I had just opened slammed shut behind me with a deafening crash. My body froze, the blood draining from my face. I turned around to look back at the living room, and that's when I saw them. The imposters. The Carvers, or whatever they were, had stepped into the doorway. They weren't moving toward me yet. They were just standing there, still, watching. And their eyes were empty, lifeless, like they were waiting for something, or for someone, and that someone was me. My heart pounded in my chest. It's too late, I thought. It's too late. Mr. Green's face had gone white. His voice trembled when he spoke again, this time louder, more urgent. Run! But it was already too late. I could feel them moving closer, those cold, empty eyes locked on me, their smiles widening, as if the trap had finally closed. And in the distance I heard it, the faintest whisper, like a breath in my ear. You're ours now. And then, everything went black. I couldn't move. My legs felt like they were made of stone, my body trapped in place as my mind raced, desperately clawing for any shred of understanding. The imposters, those things that looked like Mr. and Mrs. Carver, were closing in on me, step by slow, deliberate step. Their eyes, those dark, empty pools, locked onto me with a weight that felt suffocating. They moved with the kind of cold precision that you only see in creatures that know they have all the time in the world. Time that had run out for me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to fight back, to run, but my voice was trapped in my throat, my body frozen in terror. The house, the air around me, felt like it was closing in. Every breath I took grew harder to draw, the air thick with the kind of fear that paralyzes you. I couldn't escape, not this time. Lisa, the man, the imposter who looked like Mr. Carver, whispered, his voice as cold as ice. It's time. Time for what? My brain screamed, but the words got stuck in my throat. What did they want from me? I tried to speak, but no sound came out. The weight of the silence pressed down on me like a physical force. The woman, the one who looked like Mrs. Carver, took another slow, measured step toward me, her smile widening, pulling her features into something unnatural. It was like her face was stretching, twisting. It wasn't her anymore, it was something else, something wrong. Don't fight it, she purred, her voice thick with an unsettling sweetness. You've been waiting for us. I wanted to scream, wanted to run, but my legs refused to obey. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, each beat echoing in my ears like it was the only sound left in the world. They were too close. And then, something in my gut twisted, something in the air shifted, and I realized, with a sickening jolt, that this had happened before. The house, the feeling, the trap. I had been here before, in this exact moment. I had been the babysitter, I had met the Carvers, or the imposters who wore their faces. I had been through this nightmare before. But there was something worse than that. I wasn't supposed to escape. Everything, every encounter, every turn, every word, was part of some endless loop, a game I had unknowingly played before. And I had lost. I felt my stomach drop, my blood running cold. This wasn't the first time. I had been trapped in this cycle, this nightmare, over and over. The Carvers had been dead, and I had been chosen to play my part in whatever this house wanted. My legs wobbled beneath me as the woman reached out, her fingers brushing against my cheek. Her skin was colder than ice, like it was sucking the warmth from my very bones. I jerked back, but she followed, her smile widening, her fingers now gripping my face, pulling me closer, and that's when the horrifying truth shattered my mind. I had been the babysitter. I had played this role countless times before. Each time, I had been drawn into the house, into the trap, and each time I had failed. There was no way out. I wasn't going to survive this. I never had. I had been here before. Trapped. Caught in the same unending loop, the same fate. Destined to be the next victim. Every time I thought I had escaped, the house had pulled me back. It was waiting for me. And I had never realized it until now. The woman's voice, so calm, so soft, cut through my spiraling thoughts. "Welcome back, Lisa. We've been waiting for you." It was like a weight lifted off my shoulders, but it wasn't the release I had hoped for. It was a final truth, a truth that sealed my fate. There was no escape from this place. The walls of the house seemed to close in around me, the room warping and distorting as I stumbled backward, desperate for a way out, but it was too late. The darkness crept into my vision, the edges of reality blurring, the room dissolving into nothing. The faces of the imposters, the carvers, melted into shadows, their forms shifting, stretching toward me. The house, the trap, had me now. It had taken me over and over, and I was nothing more than another soul lost within its walls. There was no time, no hope. And then, a soft whisper, one I had heard before, echoed in my mind. It was too faint to make out at first, but it grew clearer, colder. "You're ours now." The darkness took me, and there was nothing left. I don't know how much time passed. It felt like hours or maybe minutes. Time had started to lose all meaning. The house felt suffocating, as if the very walls were closing in around me. My breath came in shallow, frantic gasps, each inhale filled with the bitter, cold air that seemed to seep from every crack in the house. The figures, those things were still there, their eyes fixed on me, their smiles widening like a grotesque mockery of something human. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run so badly, but my legs wouldn't move. The house had already claimed me, had already dragged me into its suffocating grip. I could feel it in my chest, that weight, that pressure, like something dark was wrapping around my soul. Then a noise, small, almost imperceptible, but it cut through the silence like a knife. My phone. I didn't know why, but my heart jolted at the sound, a desperate pull to answer. The room seemed to pause around me. My hand shook as I reached for it, the glow of the screen cutting through the dark. I didn't want to look at it. I didn't want to know who was calling, but my thumb pressed the green button before I could stop it. The static buzzed in my ear as I held the phone close, the sound too loud, too invasive. And then, a voice. "Lisa?" I froze. The voice was soft, too familiar, like a shadow in my mind. I knew that voice, but it wasn't right, it wasn't him. "Lisa," the voice repeated, but this time it was colder. Different. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. "Who is this?" I croaked, my throat dry, tight with fear. "What do you want from me?" The voice answered, its tone warped, an unsettling calmness to it. "It's us." "It's us?" My stomach churned. I wanted to hang up, to throw the phone away, but my hand wouldn't obey. The voice was too familiar, too close. "Who are you?" I gasped, my voice barely a whisper. "Where's Jamie? Where are the carvers?" I heard a low chuckle on the other end, soft and chilling. "The carvers? Oh, Lisa, you're talking to them right now." My mind reeled. No, this couldn't be happening. I had just seen the carvers. I had just spoken to them. But this voice, it wasn't theirs. It was wrong. You're not the carvers," I managed to choke out, my voice rising with panic. "Where's Jamie? What have you done to him?" A long pause, then the voice came again, low and slow. "You've always been ours, Lisa. Always. You just don't remember." The words hit me like a slap in the face. I felt dizzy, What did that mean? Why was it saying these things? Why was it messing with my mind like this? "You're not real," I whispered almost to myself. My breath quickened. "This is just a dream, a nightmare." "Lisa," the voice cooed, like it was speaking to a child, "it's time." Time? Time for what? My thoughts were a whirlpool, spinning out of control. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. The walls of the house felt like they were closing in on me, the air growing colder, the shadows stretching unnaturally long. "You're not real," I screamed, my voice breaking. This can't be happening." But then the line cut out. The phone went dead with a final, harsh click, and I was left in the silence, the echo of the words lingering in the air. It's time. What did that mean? I dropped the phone in horror, the sound of it hitting the floor loud in the stillness. My breath was ragged, my heart pounding in my chest. I tried to calm myself, tried to rationalize everything, but the truth was undeniable. I had been in this house too long. Something had shifted, something dark, and it was pulling me deeper. The house wasn't a house anymore, it was a trap, and then I heard it. A sound, faint at first but growing louder. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. They were coming closer, not from the front of the house but from behind me. I whipped around, my breath catching in my throat. The figures, the imposters, were standing there in the doorway. They weren't moving, they didn't need to, they were already here. They stepped into the room, their presence cold, suffocating. Their eyes never left me, their smiles widening, as if savoring the moment. The woman, the one who looked like Mrs. Carver, reached out, her icy fingers brushing my arm. "We've been waiting, Lisa," she whispered, her voice soft, too soft, as she gently guided me backward. I tried to pull away, but my body refused to obey. "It's time to join us." I stumbled, my heart racing, my mind unable to process what was happening. My body was no longer mine to control. The room tilted, the walls pressing in around me, my vision blurring. The figures were too close now, too real. And then, in the thick silence, the phone rang again. The familiar buzz broke through the chaos, too calm in comparison to the terror surrounding me. I reached for it again, my hand shaking uncontrollably, and I answered. And then I heard it, my own voice. "Lisa? Lisa, are you there?" But I wasn't speaking. The voice was mine, but not mine. It was a distorted echo of something long gone. The house was silent again. Everything faded, the room, the floor, the light. It all dissolved into nothing. No more voices, no more sounds. And then, just like that, I was gone. I had vanished. The house waited in silence, and the phone sat on the floor, its screen cracked, waiting for the next call. Thank you for venturing into the shadows with me here at Frightful Whispers. Remember, the darkness holds secrets, but also whispers truths to those who dare to listen. If tonight's tale sent shivers down your spine, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. It helps keep the fire of fright alive. Rest easy, but keep one eye open, for the night is never truly still. Until we meet again, stay vigilant, stay curious, and let the whispers guide you.